So the next talk is by Gambit30-Yownu, who's been a friend and a collaborator for many years now, maybe 15 or more, not even counting. And he's definitely been one to, I would say, write the most code that I know, the biggest user of Gambit in terms of lines of code written. And the things he's done are pretty amazing. Personally, I don't think I would have even embarked on the projects that he's achieved. So I'm really at awe in what he does. So he's going to present some of that work now and some tomorrow.
You will present it deeper tomorrow?
Yes.
It'll be nice because I had a friend that wanted to come see your projects tomorrow.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, perfect.
So it's really a teaser just to end the day with a different energy. Less technical code and more just. So, okay, so ça présente, I hope, and maybe fix the problems here. Can you help me? Parce que peut-être si je vais mettre l'écran.
Ah, oui,
je
the one mirroring.
Tu peux l'avoir ici, je pense.
System preferences,
non, mais attends, tu l'as d'habitude. Non, mais attends.
mirror displays.
Ah, okay, perfect. Okay. So this is Yownu, and I'll go straight into a zone that we created for Gambit30 that kind of showcases various things.
Oh, no, maybe
This guy.
maybe this would be better if we.
Yeah. I even close it because I won't be writing that much code. So Yownu is basically just a game I started like 10 years ago to kind of showcase a few things with my son, who's not really into programming, but we did a few fun things. And I always had this dream of doing video games in Lisp, in Gambit and whatnot. So at first it was very simple, and it evolved to kind of this point over the years. And what I want to showcase is maybe, I don't know what I want to showcase actually. So, okay. One thing that I think is very interesting for the Steam community is that
See if you've actually.
This is the bad user interface of the
strategy is to
So what I want to show is this. Okay, is that full screen? So really, so it's something that is not complete, but the real dream, really like the thing that really lights me up when I work on Yownu. The 3D is nice, of course, and all that, but it's the scripting. My dream is to have an environment, a 3D environment, where every entity, everything in the world can come alive by running a few basically Gambit scripts that have access to the whole language and all run into their separate thread and can interact together and do stuff in a completely safe way that would have a basic language that could even be accessible to a kid. My dream is to have like having a bunch of young kids come and they will game together, and because all that is also multi-user. So when I do a script like this, and I'm in the script of this sheep, which is called Galois, in honor of the great mathematician. The script, when you run it, it will invoke the function interact, and what it does is basically it will go and plot the axis, it will plot the x squared function, and it will change the color and plot the same function, which is actually here, which involves these two functions that basically tap into the 3D system. So if we actually click on it, So he's actually starting.
Awesome.
So everything is written in Gambit.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, on Jazz, what Jazz is basically a macro system on top of Gambit that adds module system because Gambit didn't have module system when I started the project. And,
So
stuff like that.
you built like the graphic library and then
Yes.
the physics engine and all that.
There's no physics engine at the moment.
Okay.
So it's basically an implementation that is on top of OpenGL. And like for the UI, during the last 20 years, I built a UI layer in Jazz that enables you to have a UI on any platform. And so the OpenGL implementations uses that to create UI like this, where you can, let's say, look at your key bindings and stuff like that. Yeah.
I agree with Mark. It looks like this is a lot of work.
It
It's
is.
impressive.
The moon's coming down. Or is that the sun?
What's mind control?
Yeah, I saw mind controls going on there.
Mind control. Yeah, so basically this
It's
game
not
is-
even bound to a key. Bind it. It's amazing.
You don't need to bind it.
You should ask Barbara. She's actually rolling a priest in Warcraft, so she knows how to do mind control. So yeah, this game was basically inspired by Warcraft when I played the game like 15 years ago, as you can see with all the models. So one thing that was really a big challenge mathematically, but was really, really fun to do actually, it was the skeleton, whoops. Like all the animations. So you have this model, but he's actually moving, breathing, and you can actually, he has all these animations. Yeah.
This is the dance from Minecraft, from
From the Warcraft.
Warcraft.
Yeah.
So this is mine from the data files from Wild.
Yes. I've basically extracted, there are programs in existence that extract the models from Warcraft, and they become milkshake format, which is an old format, but was exactly what I needed. It's basically a 3D format, but that is very simple. And I implemented in Jazz it's called skeletal animation, where actually the model is. Oops, the UI is a bit too big. I don't think I have access to the. Oh yeah, I have it. And yes, you see it here. So basically, for people who don't know about the 3D world, it's all the triangles are basically attached to bones, and there is a set of matrices that you apply to the bones to transform them, and it basically becomes the animation of the character. So as the bones are transformed by the matrices, and all that happens on the GPU, the character becomes animated.
So how much pure Gambit scheme is it?
It's basically 100% Gambit.
Really?
Yeah,
No,
there's there's no library.
How do you
part.
run code on the GPU? Is that
It's basically shader code.
Yeah.
So it's OpenGL access that, as I was saying, in the past, OpenGL used to be all these commands that you do, but nowadays modern architecture is much, much more simple. It's difficult to do, but it makes sense to do that in a high-level language because the dwarf is basically one big mesh that resides in the GPU memory. And when it's time to draw him, you basically send one command. In this case, you also have to send all the matrices that will create the animation and all that. But basically, it completely makes sense to do that in a high-level language. And on top of that, you have the shaders, which are the modern GPU way to basically map triangles. So, for instance, I think I have a shader. Yeah, so that's an example. So I could have, like in this case, if you look, the dwarf, yeah, maybe it's not very clear, but it's actually Mandelbrot being rendered in real time on the dwarf. I didn't even write that code. It's a shader I found on the internet that I found really cool, and I added that. And, yeah. But the thing also that I wanted to show that the dwarf at the moment he's like doing his thing and blah blah. And if I want to script him, I can go in this mode where a script appears over his head, and I could say like, yeah, here no, just resolve something. Yeah. Okay, I won't do it like that. I'll do it like that. Yeah. So the idea is for me, what's really the thing I want to go to is a place where the scripting language has a very low level, very simple layer that has access to everything you can do in the 3D world, but is more targeted for the end user or kids that just want to create simple things. But there is also a mode that we added where you can have a bit like Common Disk, where you have this. It's basically a common syntax that basically puts the script into power user mode, where then you have access to the full range of the language. You can import modules and you can do basically everything. So you could actually write your whole application or anything you can imagine there. But it becomes a bit, it becomes unsafe. You have access to everything instead of being in this sandbox, basically. And okay, so let's leave a bit for tomorrow. Maybe just to finish, I'll show a somewhat more advanced script. Oh no, okay, I know what to finish with. Okay. So. So this script is called race. And if I show it, the dwarf is basically the script master that has this script. And basically when the script will start, the dwarf will communicate the script to run to each of the entities. So as you see, there is this function called tick all, which basically for each creature will set the tick handler to the handler that was passed. And the script will basically go from a start phase to a hover phase to a walk phase. The hover phase is because when the gates lower, there will be a small chasm there, and there are very small creatures like small chickens and things that basically get stuck in this place. So I basically make them float in the air for a few seconds so that everybody can actually go over and yeah, let's run that. Yeah. And so we'll see who actually wins the race.
They're racing to the edge of the universe.
Yeah. I need to add a finishing.
It's very cruel for the winner.
Yeah. So unfortunately, she's not going to overtake the big guy, but she's actually going to overtake everybody else. And that idea of a script actually came when, at first, when a creature runs, you have to decide at which speed their animation is going to run. And if it's too fast, it feels like the creature is slipping because its paws are going faster than the actual speed. So I was tailoring each creature by hand, and at one point it was like, okay, it doesn't work. So I basically wrote some code to analyze how the paws were going versus the distance and all that, and I came up with a nice like table of their speeds. And what was really surprising is that for every creature, their run speed is proportional to their walk speed, all the same, except for this guy, who basically walks very slowly but runs like hell. So that's what gave me this idea to have everybody walk slowly and then she just goes.
The animations are the animations from Warcraft,
From
right?
Warcraft, yes.
Yeah, this one was a special gift. This one was a special feature.
Yeah, that's what I really love. Yeah, so that's it.
So you say this is multiplayer, right?
Yes.
So what happens if I have this big script that I have locally on my machine that I want run on yours?
At the moment, the approach that because when I say it's multiplayer, the game is multiplayer. The scripting is somewhat multiplayer. It's a work in progress. And also, I've taken a 2-year break from this because I worked on the video conference software. But now we're going back into this because our dream is to integrate the 3D world with the video conferencing software, where you'll actually be able to create, places and have the people you want to have a conference with in this place where you can actually put a fire camp and trees and make it really warm and inviting and stuff like that. So we're kind of going back into the 3D world. So the scripting is really like, okay, it works really well in single player. In multiplayer, it's a much more complex problem, of course. So at the moment, the scripts run on the server. So when you see the script of a creature, the script is actually running on the server, and the commands are actually dispatched to all the clients. So it kind of works. And we also need some client scripting for the UI, and so much to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
Will you show the Minecraft thing?
Yeah, maybe I can give back,
Yeah, that would be interesting, I think.
but I'll show it tomorrow. I'll just show it.
Oh, just show it now.
Show it.
And Facebook did something very similar to what you just said you wanted to. The one with the conference with multiple people in a 3D environment that you can program. They did this with the Oculus Rift.
Okay.
Inside this application, you can now do exactly what you said. Have a conference in a 3D environment and modify it as you wish.
Okay.
Can you script it?
No, you cannot script it. So, but maybe you could watch this. So it could inspire you some functional
I'll
tweaks.
watch it.
Quebec.
So let me get my berries.
Is it randomly generated like in Minecraft?
Actually, there is both. Most of the worlds I have at the moment, the big work was to actually import the Minecraft worlds because there was like thousands and thousands of amazing worlds in Minecraft that I wanted to be able to play with, be in. So I did the work to actually read the Minecraft format but then it's basically editable and everything. And the actual random generation, it's more like a work in progress. And so this world in particular is a world I just took somewhere in the Minecraft universe. And there is a really cool city with a dragon somewhere, if I can just find it.
There's no lag.
No, you know, the actual, if you look at the profiler, there's a real-time profiler that is basically based, it's an evolution of StatProf, the work that Guillaume Germain did like so many years ago. And so this is all the tasks that are running in Yownu. So the visual rendering, the video output, even UDP is there, the rendering, etc. And if you do a test, I have a zone that has all the kinds of features that you can have in a zone. It's called sample. And it basically renders 3,000 sectors per second. So as you move, you have these, oops. So you have these huge blocks of 16 by 16 by 16, which are the visual sectors. And the reason to do that is that the main optimization in 3D is collision. Because when I'm looking here, of course, there's sectors everywhere, but there's about only 1/5 of them that I need to see because of my cone of vision. So the whole universe is segregated into these sectors. And as you move along the sectors in front of you, you know, there's like this huge 3D cube around you that the sectors get loaded and the ones in the back get unloaded. And so these sectors that have to read the file to disk and actually load, they load about 3,000 of these huge sectors per second, which is like something like 20 or 30 times faster than Minecraft. And that code actually, maybe as a closing thing, I wrote an initial version that was already pretty fast. And I was struggling to make it faster, and when I talked to Marc, he basically explained to me how lambda lifting works. And the version that came out of all this understanding of how Gambit does lambda lifting, so you know there's less blah blah, etc., etc. This is the version that actually became like so fast. And yeah, which is why you end up being able to navigate this world really, really super smoothly while the character is really fluid in its thing. Yeah. And I just can't find this.
And are you using threads?
Oh yeah. So everything you see here is basically a thread. Green thread. Yeah, totally. And yeah, there's like, sometimes there can be like, I've created zone to test Gambit, the performance with entities that each run their thread, and I've had like 50,000 animals moving around in a way it works.
What about garbage collection on top of the world?
So, you know, it's a bit like the thing of Java, you know, like, anyways, all these things. So, the development in Gambit for me was amazing, but I spent so much time around the problems of the garbage collect. So it's not ideal. If I had generational garbage collect, I wouldn't have done all that work. But on the other hand, that work ended up really fundamental, because even if one day Gambit comes with a generational garbage collect, the work I did is actually essential. For instance, as an example, you're in Lisp, so everything usually is Lisp structure, and you're happy, and you know it's. But when you're in the 3D world like that is real time, and each time you have a garbage collect, you feel it as an impact on your character that just jams, it just doesn't work. So I had to actually get the garbage collect to happen within like 1/20th of a second for it to be non-perceptible. And one thing I did is, for instance, when you land on the world and there is collision, you know, I can jump and there's a floor. And so there is all these triangles everywhere that need to be detected. So this is the actual physical geometry of the world. So of course my first implementation was, you know, vectors of stuff, but at one point I recoded all that to be encoded as homogeneous vectors. So when the system goes through and asks the storage, the storage and memory for what is, you know, let's say I'm running or I'm clicking somewhere. So these cubes of physicality will be loaded in memory, but they are contained in homogeneous vectors completely. So they have zero pressure on the garbage collect. And the actual information gets extracted. And if I do a change to the universe, it basically gets encoded, but gets saved into these amazing homogeneous vectors that have zero pressure on the garbage collect.
Do they still need to be copied from the to the from region?
Are they? I think.
Well, if they're big enough, they're going to be still.
No, they're not still, so they still have to be copied.
No,
Yeah,
no,
so,
if they are big enough,
yeah,
and big enough means like 1 kilobyte.
yeah. So I think it's a mix. So the war, the GC war is really on two fronts. It's making sure the memory is small enough that the GCs are very fast. But there's also the war of making sure there's not, you know, I remember when I started working with the 3D animations of the characters moving, at one point I was generating something like 20 garbage collects per second. It was insane because the character as it moves, there was so many matrix made multiplications and everything, and it was just insane. So, and after completely reworking it, so, you know, whatever, now the animation completely operates in constant memory. So as the character is moving and dancing and doing its thing, it allocates zero memory. So, but of course that was a lot of work. And that's kind of the Achilles heel of doing the development in Lisp versus in C. But of course the gains are so much greater.
You have a question here.
Are you familiar with the Lua scriptings for video games?
Yes, because I played Warcraft.
Yes. How would you compare the learning experience for someone that wants just to script a game in Gambit scheme versus in Lua? Because Lua is used in a lot of games for kids and scripts and everything. So how would you compare the two of them?
I would say that scripting here is much easier to do, but it's so less mature than a Lua equivalent like in World of Warcraft. But if it reached a level of similar maturity, oh, it would be amazing. You know, like the example I wanted to show you, let's say I create a new zone. And let's just do the example I was showing. If you want to make him dance, you just type dance. And if I want to make him move, I can say move 5. And he basically just moves and starts to dance. And because we're in Lisp, you know, we have optional arguments, keyword arguments, so many levels of abstractions. So we have all these levels of abstraction to hide it basically from the end user, give them all these easy, natural ways to script.
Are the scripts compiled or?
That's where the x86 backend
Okay.
would be amazing. Because that's, at the moment, the scripts are very simple, so there's no problem with performance. But the dream would be to have a complex world, you know, that 10 people are creating naturally instead of, you know, developing a game in the classical way. You just create a world. world and you start working on it, and the world just evolves with everybody working on it. So then performance becomes a key issue. And of course, at the moment, you would need GCC and all that. And it's kind of silly. But if we had the x86 backend, it would be amazing because it would just be compiled on the fly and just run compile.
Well, actually,
So-
now you do have it.
54%.
Well, not really. I mean, all the code, runs. It's just that 54, actually, it was 56% of the primitives are inline. So
Yeah. But basically, I think it could probably be usable as soon as the floating point numbers are implemented.
okay.
Yeah, because of course, 3D software uses floating points
Yes.
massively.
Indeed, those are part of the missing 44%.
Yes. Yes. So I think only that, and probably that would be enough to have basic scripting population. Yeah. Any other question?
With this Lua versus Scheme conversation, that's like the Lua guys have built up DSLs for computer game things.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's the, that's
So what's the question?
yeah. So somebody asked like, hey, how is Lua versus Scheme suitable? And then I think you answered that, Lua is much better because it's more developed. Well, I mean, that's not a language argument, but it's more like a DSL library kind of argument.
Yeah, for sure. I fell in love with Lisp 30 years ago when I started reading the Little Lisp, and this is basically a revolution. My dream is to have a game where I can basically go in, give behaviors. So I won't show it today, but like here, there is an example. You have, I know what to show. So, oops. So you see this cow basically is computing all the solution of the M queens problem. And yeah, that's a very simple script. That's the M queens that I actually took from Gambit. It's basically Gambit code, copy pasted like as is to compute the solutions. And then a bit of code to present it, calling the save function that basically takes a string and highlights it over U, and basically waiting and looping. Very simple. And there is also the, but I'll show that tomorrow. There's the real queens. So the queens that actually the real queens. And the cat is the guy. How many ways could eight queens, etc. And the cat has the script. And he basically communicates with each queen, and each queen has like a mailbox to communicate with the other queens and wait. And I'll show it tomorrow. All good. What's the question? Is it open source? Yeah, no, it's not. At the moment, it's not open source.
But in
Sorry? The language it's built on, which is Jazz, which is built on Gambit, which I might talk a bit more about, is open source. Like 10 years ago, Mark convinced me to actually make the move to open source. When I started doing the work on the video game, it was basically just to have fun, but there was always this idea that Jazz is open source, so I need some kind of way to maybe make money, and so it was closed source. But at the moment, the main software we're creating, the video conferencing software, is meant to be a free platform. So, the urge for money is a bit like. So I'm not sure I will make it open source, but I'm definitely very more relaxed about that, and could see people interested, like someone wants to use it for something, we can talk about it, and maybe it will become open source. Yeah. If there's enough interest, actually, it would be amazing if it became open source because, as amazing as it looks, and it is amazing, it's still the work of only like one person. So it hasn't been tested or refined or anything enough to actually call it a real product. You couldn't take that and give it to the hands of a kid. It needs to be used. It needs to be maintained. It needs to have people using it and finding bugs and it needs a community. So yeah, open source is clearly something that I'm opposed to.
If you have character models that you got from Warcraft,
Yes.
you might have some difficulty open sourcing those.
Yes. So, for instance, in the all the things that are copyrighted in the software, from the start, I've put very clearly in a copyrighted folder, and there's an amount that basically talks about that. So everything about that, the music, the characters, were basically placeholders for me to be able to write the code for the 3D environments.
Yeah.
But the goal is, of course, to move away from them. And, like I was so happy a few years ago, Mark's girlfriend at the time, his daughter was a graphic artist, and in just a night she created like these trees that I love so much.
Yeah.
Like very abstract. It took her a night. It would take me a lifetime to
How
create
did
these
she do it? A creation tool, or is
Yeah,
she
in Blender.
hand code all the triangles?
No, in Blender, it's actually Blender models.
Blender.
Yeah.
Ah.
So the software has, we don't actually read Blender directly because it's such a complex format.
Yeah.
But there is the amazing format called the Milkshake, which is kind of deprecated.
Milkshake?
Milkshake. Yeah, it's an old 3D thing. But it was in an era where the only thing the format does is the only thing I need. So it's binary, it's clean, it's simple, it's perfect. And Blender actually has an add-on to export and import in that format. So it works really well. You go in Blender, you create your animation, your model, blah, blah, blah. You use the add-on, creates the milkshake thing, and it becomes available here. You can put it. And that's basically how we created this guy. So this guy is our baby creation, showing how Barbara and me are artistics. We were able to create a triangle.
Talking about the 3D models.
Yeah.
This idea you talked a lot about making it available for the kids, for learning and all this stuff. So, but in a few years, I think kids will all work with virtual realities game more than computer games. That's my point of view. But also to this direction, open VR. Don't you think it could be a cool way to add a layer of open VR to this stuff, so you could use it in the virtual reality using a headset, and also for the just maybe an idea for the 3D models. There's an application named Quiver that lets you create your 3D models very instinctively with your hands without any tools. So
when you have a VR set.
Yes, exactly. So and you can download them. So it would be a very easy and fast way to do your own models. I don't know. Maybe just
maybe.
because I really see the possibilities for VR to work with it in a cool way.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was like banks of assets or like 3D models. Just like online, you can find like banks of sprites for 2D games.
I've tried, and I think it was true like maybe 15 years ago, but now it's everybody is trying to make money out of them. And maybe I just don't know where to look, but it has been difficult.
Yeah.
And at the moment, for me, it's not that important because my feeling is that everything will come out of community. If I'm the only one using and creating this software, it's just a fun project. But if people start, doing stuff and everything, someone will have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or whatever that is graphic like Mark's girlfriend's daughter, and people will just add stuff, and
Can you embed like a Chrome browser or Chromium browser?
I'm not saying it's impossible because everything is might be possible.
Translate it to JavaScript.
You could run the Gambit OS in there, and
Yeah.
it can be a scheme implementation.
You might be able to translate to JavaScript and run WebGL.
Yeah, so many projects. Which is why I was so happy when I met Barbara and we actually were able to have this dream, but come up with something much, much more simple. That turned out to be still a big project, which was just, like audio and video. So instead of having this thing, which is basically has like 200 lanyards in front of me, it's like impossible to do. But the video conference, we were able to kind of bring to a finished product where it really works. It's something you can give to someone, and we actually have something that is polished. To bring something like that is so open-ended is so challenging. So it's nice when you have this kind of really open-ended toolbox with like things that work, things that don't work, projects, but you can say, okay, what I want to do is this thing using the 3D universe, and then you use the parts that work, and the ones that don't work, you just polish them. The thing, if you just look at all the icons, there are so many avenues that there is an amazing. I don't know who here has seen the Brett Victor Inventing on Principle video. Oh, look it up. Brett Victor, he's one of the creative minds at Apple. He created a video 10 years ago called Inventing on Principles. And honestly, it's the time where my mouth was completely on the floor the whole time. And it's basically from that video that it gave me the idea, the desire to create that, where basically I haven't used it in a long time, so I kind of want to just start from scratch because it's not working as well as it used to work 2 years ago, unfortunately. But let's add here and basically it's this idea of having a back-in-time debugger. And anytime in the world, you can basically pause the universe. And when the universe is paused, everything is paused, but the universe, anyways, to do the multiplayer thing, needs to have a history of what's happening. So you can actually rewind time and go back to exactly where you were. And this opens up so many possibilities. In the video, Brett Victor shows a few cool ideas he had about it. But seriously, the most challenging mathematical thing that I had to do in Together was collision detection.
That's tough.
It's really, really tough. So
You mean Together or Yownu?
in Yownu. Yeah. Oh yeah, now it's working. So as you see, it's a very simple flat world, so of course. But when you have like complex geometry, free geometry and everything, collision detection is so difficult. Unfortunately, I have a friend who's like a really math genius, and we worked on that a lot.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to stress out was that this work would have taken us 10 times more time if it hadn't been for the just-in-time debugger. Because what happened is we created these crazy structures like staircase and stuff where we have tons of bugs. And we were just running through the world, and at some point like, whoa, we just went through a wall, what the fuck, there's a bug. Pause the world, and you can't reproduce the conditions that created this really limit case bug. But with a just-in-time debugger like that, you can. So we would just go back in time